Exposed. Billionaire CEO's shocking discovery. After 4 years, a triple miracle. He never expected. Jake Thompson, CEO of a tech empire, was on the cusp of another milestone. But his mind was racing. Its contents felt like a cacophony of echoes, meetings, deals, and a missed dinner with family. The weight of his title felt heavy, almost suffocating. Was the wealth he accumulated worth the distance growing between him and Sarah? He was tethered to his ambitions, yet felt utterly adrift, as if he had been drowning in the very success he had fought so hard to achieve. Today was different, though. The crisp autumn air pricked at his skin, prompting flashes of memory. Running through leaf-covered streets as a boy, laughter erupting from family gatherings. He took a deep breath, feeling the nostalgic breeze reminding him of a simpler time. But just as quickly the realization hit him. A bankrupt relationship with his wife and children loomed larger with every missed moment. Each call and late-night email was a hammer, fracturing the delicate glass of his family life. Sam's voice shattered his thoughts like glass. The news felt like a punch. A close friend had succumbed to a relentless disease. Cancer had spent years stealing Sam away, and now it had claimed him entirely, leaving a void that echoed with what could have been. Jake's gut twisted. The anguish twisted deeper than he anticipated. Could the empire he had built mean anything when juxtaposed against the finality of death? Suddenly the suit felt as constrictive as a noose. The foundation upon which he had built his life felt unstable. Could he be so driven for success that he had overlooked the very purpose driving his pursuits? He had earned every dollar but lost pieces of himself and his family along the way. The thought clawed at him, the gnawing question refusing to let go. What legacy would he leave behind? He stared blankly at papers cluttering his desk, the bold numbers dancing mockingly. Before he could grasp the telephone to call Sarah, anguish surged. He hesitated, overwhelmed by the daunting truth. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven by desperation, Jake found himself standing before his grandfather's old home, a threshold to the past. Dust motes swirled as he crossed the threshold of the long-abandoned workshop. It was a shrine of dreams, marred by time. He stumbled across his grandfather's hastily drawn sketches and half-finished projects, a stark juxtaposition of potential against his glossy, successful but hollow tech world. As he rummaged through the remnants of lost hope, he grasped a prototype that buzzed with dormant energy. But with it lay a handwritten letter detailing the heartaches and sacrifices imbued in innovation. So vividly portrayed, the letter suddenly forged a link between Jake and a fragmented legacy of dreams. Just then, Mr. Ellis emerged, a beacon of guidance from the past. Once a mentor in a simpler time, he now stood before him, offering wisdom woven from the very fabric of human connection Jake had forsaken. It's not just about the numbers, Jake, he stressed with a gravity that felt heavier than steel. It's about the people at your side, the impact you create. As Jake stood at the crossroads of profit and purpose, urgency clawed at him. Corporate vultures lurked, circling an opportunity that could obliterate his family's name for financial gain. He could sense the sinister whisper of greed beckoning him to forsake the values he once held dear. But would he join them, sacrificing everything he cherished for empty triumph? Caught in the eye of the storm, Jake felt the imminent collapse of all he had built pressing down on him. He stood, heart racing, at a threshold not just of his office, but of his entire life, pondering a choice that would define him. What legacy awaited him if he chose duty over love? The phone's glow felt distant, yet close, a thread connecting him to what could still be, if he dared to reach out. Time was slipping away. The answer, blurred just beyond reach, beckoned him toward the unknown. The weight of Mr. Ellis's words lingered in the air as Jake stood alone in the old workshop, surrounded by remnants of a simpler life that had become unattainable. The dust swirling in the sunlight felt like time itself, an endless cycle of moments missed and opportunities squandered. His heart hammered against the constraints of his meticulously crafted facade of success. Could he really turn away from the empire that consumed him? Or was there a way to reclaim that purpose without losing everything? Internal conflict gnawed at him as he felt the dual pull of ambition and love. Every tick of the clock was a reminder that he could either succumb to the pressure of greed or break free and forge a new path. The prototype in his hand buzzed with potential, a spark of inspiration amidst the ruins. Ideas began swirling within him like the autumn leaves outside the window. Could he not use this moment of reckoning to revive the very values his grandfather had cherished, values that had become obscured in his relentless pursuit of wealth? Jake's mind raced, and the room seemed smaller, constricting his thoughts like the suit he wore. He could envision a new project inspired by the heartaches of innovation, a venture that would prioritize human connection over profit. But how would he approach it? He couldn't afford to be naive. The tech world was ruthless, and every decision came with repercussions. He set the prototype down and felt the weight of the letter, now crumpled in his grasp. A connection to a legacy, a reminder of love tempered by sacrifice. Mr. Ellis's gentle but firm gaze echoed in his mind, and Jake found that the question of legacy morphed into something tangible. How could he not only redefine himself, but also reshape the future of his family's name? There had to be a way to merge passion with purpose, to innovate without losing sight of what truly mattered. He took a decisive step towards the door, feeling the chill of motivation wash over him. Each step felt like the release of burdens long held. He envisioned calling Sarah and showing her the letter, discussing what it meant to them both, opening a dialogue he had dared not pursue in far too long. He imagined the warmth of her smile and how it could reignite the connection they had lost. But as he reached for his phone, the thought flickered across his mind like a warning light. What if Sarah wasn't ready to hear him out? What if she had already resigned herself to the distance between them, a chasm he had dug deeper with every late night and desperate deal? Those fears slammed against his resolve, but he pushed through them. Change required courage, and he would not shy away from it any longer. Jake gritted his teeth, his determination solidifying into action. He began drafting not just a plan for a new project, but a vision for restoring his family, a vision that demanded sacrifices from both personal and professional fronts. The board meetings and profit margins had dulled his perspective, but now they became numbers he would recast in a light of community and connection. Driven by clarity, he could feel a fire ignite within him, a purpose reborn, demanding execution. As each revelation unfurled, his heart raced with a potent mix of fear and excitement, but the looming specter of his corporate rivals and the hollow promises of greed still haunted him. Just as he was about to press dial, a new realization washed over him. Was he truly ready to confront the board about his new vision? The room began closing in once again as he faced the reality of not just professional risks, but personal sacrifices he would need to embrace. The harsh tide of doubt threatened to pull him under. But beneath it all, an urge simmered. This could be the moment where everything changed. With the phone still poised in his hand and a heart full of resolve, he pondered the immediate repercussions of his choices. But what awaited him in the next step? Would he summon the strength to challenge the norms of his industry? Would he break free from the chains that had held him bound for too long? The seconds ticked on, questioning the weight of his decision. The moment of truth loomed. Would he risk it all for the sake of a legacy that mattered? Drawn into the vortex of potential, he knew only one thing. It was time to redefine success. And as he steadied his resolve, he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting to see if he would falter. Would the truth he wrestled with be the dawn of his transformation or the precipice of his downfall? Jake's hands trembled slightly as he placed the phone down on the workbench. The gravity of the moment threatened to crush him, every heartbeat resounding with the echoes of choices yet to be made. Could he genuinely initiate a conversation that might forge a new connection with Sarah? Anxiety clawed at him as he scrutinized the dust-laden surfaces of the workshop, remnants of his family's history mingling with shards of his discontent. He stepped outside, breathing in the crisp air which felt refreshing against his heated thoughts. Each breath served as a reminder that the world they had created was not just about profits and margins, but the shared experiences that came with genuine connection. Yet, the knot in his stomach tightened when he pictured the boardroom. The faces of those who had once admired his relentless ambition now slimmed to mere silhouettes of skepticism. What if they laughed? What if they wouldn't support a shift towards a model that prioritized human values over the bottom line? The thought was nearly paralyzing. But then again, wasn't risk the very essence of innovation? He would have to face this head-on, regardless of the potential fallout. Jake returned to the workshop, a sudden surge of determination coursing through him. With renewed clarity, he picked up the prototype again, envisioning an application that could foster meaningful dialogues between people. It would harness technology not just to engage consumers, but to enhance relationships. He jotted down notes with fervor, his mind racing as ideas coalesced into a coherent vision, but doubt hesitated in the wings. He paused, reflecting on what he was proposing. To stand before the board and advocate for a project that would place empathy at the forefront, that felt like both a professional leap and a personal revelation. He had relied too heavily on traditional metrics of success for far too long. Now he knew he had to lead with purpose rather than profit, an unprecedented venture that could either redeem his legacy or fracture it irreparably. A familiar voice echoed in his mind. The last conversation he had with Mr. Ellis echoed like a siren song. The older man had once told him that the greatest innovations came from understanding unmet human needs. Was Jake ready to embrace such a raw vision? He had spent years shaping a reputation around hard numbers. Now he faced the prospect of altering the entire narrative of his life and career. Just then, his phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Can we talk? I miss you." A simple request, yet it felt momentous. He was drawn into a whirlwind of emotions, awareness pulsing through him. Perhaps this was the pivotal moment he had been seeking, the intersection of his personal struggle and professional intent. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Would she understand his vision? Could he articulate his need for change clearly enough for her to see the man he aspired to be? Before second-guessing himself again, he took a deep breath and responded, "Absolutely. When and where?" With every tap, he felt the incursion of dread intertwined with the thrill of stepping into the unknown. There was no turning back now. The stakes rose exponentially. The conversation with Sarah would precede the confrontation with the board, and both would demand authenticity and courage. As he hit send, realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. He wasn't just seeking to redefine his legacy. He was embarking on a profound journey of self-discovery. This wave of vulnerability felt foreign, yet liberating. Were they both prepared to confront the fractures in their relationship brought on by his ambition? Would they find a way to heal over current circumstances? Jake took another steadying breath, one that filled his chest with an exhilarating blend of hope and anxiety. As he prepared for those critical conversations ahead, he understood instinctively. Each moment carried the weight of transformation. In the stillness of the workshop, he felt the tension of what lay ahead. Would he have the courage to face the board and implement his vision? Would that vision also help mend his connection with Sarah? He stepped toward the door, ready to embrace both paths. But the true test loomed large. If he stumbled, would he be able to rise again, or would this journey mark the end of everything he had built? Jake arrived at the quaint cafe where he had arranged to meet Sarah, the familiar aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the unforeseen intensity of his anticipation. As he stepped inside, his eyes immediately searched for her, hoping to catch a glimpse of the easy connection they once shared. Instead, cold fingers of self-doubt dug deeper into his mind, reminding him of the stakes that enveloped him, both personally and professionally. He found her in a corner booth, sunlight spilling through the window, illuminating the contours of her face that had grown familiar over time but now felt distant. She looked up as he approached, her expression a mixture of warmth and uncertainty. The weight of unspoken words filled the space between them. "Hi," she said softly, her voice tinged with vulnerability. It struck him how much he missed their candid conversations, the seamless transitions between laughter and serious deliberation. "Hey," Jake replied, sliding into the seat across from her. He noticed the tremor in his voice, the unsteady navigation of emotions raging beneath the surface. How could he recount the tumult of his intent when the stakes for both of them felt so high? The small talk that followed felt hollow against the backdrop of their deeper connection. He could sense her eyes probing for clarity, a hint of the man whose ambitions had led to distance. She glanced down at her coffee, swirling the dark liquid absent-mindedly. "Jake, I'm glad you reached out. It's been hard to not share everything that's happening," Sarah confessed, her gaze finally meeting his. "It's like we're strangers now." The cracks in their relationship emerged from the shadows. It was a mirror held up to his own struggle. His ambition, once an ally in their shared dreams, had morphed into a barrier that now threatened two lives intertwined. "I'm sorry for that," he said, moving cautiously along the precipice of honesty. "I've been lost in my own pursuits, and I didn't realize the cost. It's as if I've been so focused on success that I've lost sight of what truly matters." Her soft sigh hung in the air, heavy with unspoken frustration. "But you're still the same person, right? I just wish you would let me share that journey with you." Jake recognized the truth in her words, the emotional toll that his path had taken not just on him, but also on her. It struck him that the proposed innovation he envisioned wasn't solely about his business. It was also about reigniting the conversations and connections that had dwindled. "I want to change that," he said, a newfound resolve sharpening his tone. "I've felt this urgent need to create something that makes a difference in people's lives, a way to connect beyond transactions." Sarah's eyebrows arched slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Isn't that risky? People might not understand. They value success measured in other ways." "Then there's the question of whether it matters if they understand," he espoused, emboldened by the sincerity of their exchange. "What if we could pivot away from merely chasing numbers and create something meaningful? It feels like a combination of our dreams being morphed into reality." As the gravity of his words settled between them, he saw Sarah's expression shift. The realization burdened, yet invigorated him. They had always been each other's balance. "I didn't know you felt that way," she said, her voice sincere yet cautious. "But is it enough to risk everything you've built? To face the board? It could mean losing what you've worked for." "I'm willing to face that risk," Jake answered, feeling the swell of confidence fill the void left by previous doubts. "But I also need you, not just for this new path, but as a partner in all of it." Their eyes locked, and he could feel the electric pulse of possibility that surrounded them. It was a silent pact forged in recognition. They could choose to redefine every aspect of their lives together. Then abruptly, Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket, shattering the moment. The message was from his assistant, a reminder of tomorrow's board meeting. A chilling yet invigorating anxiety stirred within him as he considered the gravity of his choices. How could he rally unwavering support in the corporate world for the unprecedented vision he promised to pursue? Sarah watched him intently, her expression shifting as she considered the implications of his unfolding courage. Would they work together to meld personal aspirations with professional imperatives? The conversation they both desperately needed was on the brink of ignition, yet the reality of the looming confrontation with the board hung heavily. Jake's heart raced. He felt as if he were teetering on a precipice marked by uncertainty but also excitement. With a deep breath, he resolved not to back down. He would face this dual challenge, the intertwining of love and ambition pushing him toward uncharted territories. Would he find the balance he was searching for, or would the foundation crumble? What lay ahead felt daunting, but Jake knew this was only the beginning. The true test of his vision was yet to come, and the stakes had never been higher. Tomorrow would reveal who he truly was beneath the layers of ambition, one way or another. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jake felt an acute sense of urgency that propelled him forward. The cafe's atmosphere seemed to echo the conflict brewing within him, the lingering warmth of his conversation with Sarah igniting both a fear of failure and a hope for reconciliation. He returned home, his mind racing with strategies, potential objections, and questions that would inevitably arise in the board meeting. The sleek lines of his minimalist apartment that had once been a sanctuary now felt stark and isolating, devoid of the support he craved. He sank onto the sofa, grappling with the idea that he could either present a new vision or continue down the solid path he had been following. The dim light refracted off the glass table, casting shadows that danced around him like the self-doubt that threatened to engulf his consciousness. Deep down, he knew he had to confront the board, yet the fear of dismissal gripped him. What if his vision was too grand, too vague for their profit-driven minds? Jake struggled against the tide of traditionalism that had anchored his thinking for far too long. He had often shied away from challenging the status quo, fearing the ramifications. But Sarah's unwavering belief in his potential reverberated within him, urging him to embrace a more audacious approach. He reached for his laptop, needing to organize his thoughts. As he typed out his ideas, fragments of conversations floated back to him, moments where he had bridged gaps for others, where innovation had led to genuine connections. Those memories breathed life into his words as he crafted a presentation that incorporated both human experience and corporate aspirations. The vision began to take shape, powerful yet compassionate, far-reaching yet intimate. Yet a gnawing uncertainty remained. Could he genuinely articulate the need for transformation to a room full of hardened business executives? He needed a strategy, something more than just a set of slides to invoke change. It had to be about convincing not just their minds, but their hearts. As he created possible scenarios in his mind, he began to see it clearly, the vital piece he was missing. He needed a narrative, a story that would resonate with the board just as it had with Sarah, a story that showcased vulnerability, the undeniable human angle behind corporate success. Their so-called data-driven decisions were often anchored in emotions, unseen yet decisive. Jake envisioned his approach while pacing the confines of his apartment, internally rehearsing each point. He would share a personal anecdote, perhaps about the early struggles he faced as a startup, the sacrifices made, and the people whose lives were changed. As he delved deeper into storytelling, he tapped into a hidden strength he had overlooked, his ability to connect through personal trials and triumphs. The clock chimed, marking the late hour, yet he continued to prepare. Ideas flowed, and he began refining not just what he wanted to say, but how to say it, to infuse passion into the sterile language of his usual corporate presentations. But the gravity of his decision loomed larger. He needed to consider the potential fallout, the risk of emotional exposure. Would this shift alienate allies who thrived on conventional business norms? More importantly, might someone in the board resist, perhaps even sabotage his risks for transformative change? Jake forced himself to take a seat, closing his laptop to allow silence to wash over him. Uncertainty still loomed, but the reluctance to pursue change was quickly being replaced by a determination to forge ahead. He pictured Sarah's approving smile, the hope in her eyes pushing him to believe that he was capable of rising above expectations. He needed to channel that essence into his presentation, a blend of heart and intellect. Tomorrow would not merely be a test of his vision, but a reflection of his growth, a culmination of personal and professional evolution that transcended simple ambition. As he finally drifted off to sleep, the questions that lingered would not disappear. How would he forge alliances in a room of skeptics? Could he stand firm against the tide of established perspectives? And ultimately, would this journey of connection regenerate not just his career, but his relationship with Sarah? In the quiet of the night, Jake vowed to confront these barriers, even if it meant risking everything once more. The board awaited, and with it, the reality of his ambitions hung tantalizingly in the balance. As dawn broke, casting a muted light into his bedroom, Jake stirred. His mind had mercilessly rehearsed every imaginable scenario, trading a restless night's sleep for vivid dreams of boardroom confrontations, each more intimidating than the last. He could almost hear the echoes of laughter mingled with skepticism as he stood before the panel, armed with his freshly crafted presentation. Emerging from the confines of his thoughts, he dressed with purpose, each article of clothing a subtle reinforcement of his resolve. The tailored suit enveloped him like armor, while the cuffs felt like chains linking him to the traditional expectations of his corporate environment. Yet beneath this guise there flickered a newfound flame of ambition, seizing him with raw determination. As Jake stepped into the city, The vibrant energy around him resonated distinctly with his internal awakening. He navigated the bustling streets, absorbing the sights and sounds of humankind, each interaction a reminder of stories waiting to be told. The blaring horns, the laughter spilling out from cafes, the purposeful strides of pedestrians. These experiences fed into his chaotic thoughts, affirming the very humanity he wished to bring into the boardroom. The elevator ride felt interminable. Each floor that passed brought a fresh wave of agitation. Would his narrative carry weight? Could he genuinely pierce the veneer of apathy that often masked corporate decision-making? Would they see the truth behind his words or dismiss them as just another pitch? The heaviness of self-doubt clawed at him, but as he reached the top floor, something deep within sparked. A resolute intention to transform not just the board's outlook, but his own self-image. Walking into the conference room, his heart raced. The panel of executives glowered at him from their sleek chairs, their expressions betraying little. He caught sight of some familiar faces, disinterested gazes peering over their neatly stacked reports. Jake reminded himself of Sarah's encouragement. Her belief in his capacity linked directly to the essence of his message. Taking a deep breath, he positioned himself at the podium. As he keyed up his slides, he purposefully prolonged the moment of silence, allowing the room to fill with his anticipation. He felt the weight of his own vulnerabilities resting on his shoulders, but instead of retreating, he chose to embrace them. "Good morning," he began, his voice steady yet infused with a potent urgency that compelled him forward. "Today, I'm not here to present just a new product strategy or quarterly projections. I'm here to share a story, our story." He felt the shift in atmosphere. A flicker of curiosity ignited among the board members, some leaning in slightly, the faintest hint of interest breaking their veneer. He spoke of his early days, the anxieties, the crushing setbacks, the invaluable human connections made along the way. As he recounted the turning points that had turned his initial fears into pathways of innovation, he could feel the narrative arc pulling him deeper into engagement with his audience. The dry metrics of their financial reports faded into the background, replaced by the rich tapestry of his personal journey. Yet, even as the tension began to ease, a nagging thought gnawed at him. Would this emotional resonance be enough? His heart raced with a sudden clarity as he deliberately switched gears, preparing to intertwine the exhilarating emotional narratives with the hard facts of the business before them. Jake knew now he had to strike a balance, a compelling argument supported explicitly by data-driven projections that aligned with the unyielding interests of the board. The challenge wasn't merely to connect with them emotionally, it was to persuade them that a leap of faith could forge measurable success. In this rare convergence of heart and intellect, he sensed another surge of confidence, perhaps buoyed by the understanding that every challenge faced was also an opportunity to further cultivate his identity, transforming from a mere corporate soldier into an innovative leader. The stakes of his encounter transcended the boardroom. It was a counterbalance to the deeper struggle within, his fight against self-imposed limits. However, as the presentation progressed, he felt resistance simmer quietly from one executive, Roy, whose scorned dissent pierced through Jake's newfound courage. As Roy delivered a particularly cutting remark, questioning the feasibility of emotional narratives within a profit-oriented agenda, Jake's heart sank momentarily. The time had come to face the very doubts he sought to overcome. "Thank you, Roy," Jake replied, leveling his gaze with newfound defiance. "But let me ask, what have we built if we've forgotten the people who drive this business? It's not just about profits, it's also about purpose." A ripple of unease blanketed the room, but that moment of realization dawned upon Jake. This was not just a challenge. This was the crucible in which his character would be forged. The journey to change was far from over, and yet he could sense the pivotal moment approaching. Jake bolstered his resolve, poised to prove not just the potential of his vision, but the very essence of who he was becoming. The board's response still awaited, and with it hung the fate of both his career ambitions and his relationship with Sarah. Would he find allies amidst the skepticism, or would he stand alone as a lone beacon of transformation? The only certainty lay in his willingness to face whatever emerged next. Jake's pulse quickened as he observed the subtle change in the room's atmosphere. Roy's icy skepticism lingered like a shadow, but it wasn't enough to deter him. As he pressed on, weaving facts with the emotional tug of his narrative, he began to feel the board's tension shift, even if minutely. A few nods, an exchanged look of curiosity between executives, and his heart surged with cautious optimism. He wrapped up his presentation by emphasizing the human element behind their products. "Business is about people," he declared, letting the weight of his words settle into the silence. "Our customers, our employees, and yes, even our shareholders, they all have stories. If we ignore that, we deny why we exist." But as he stepped down from the podium, triumph momentarily danced on the periphery of his consciousness. The real spectacle lay in the uncertain aftermath. Would they embrace this new narrative or expulse him back into confinement? He sensed Roy approaching, his face taut, a mixture of clashing emotions and critical thoughts pressing against the surface. "What you said was compelling, Jake," Roy began cautiously. "But can you guarantee it translates into numbers? This isn't a charity. We are here to maximize profit. Heartwarming stories don't pay the bills." Anger bubbled beneath Jake's composed exterior. Wasn't this the very mindset he wished to dismantle? "I understand the emphasis on profit," he responded evenly. "But historical data proves that companies prioritizing human connections outperform their competition in the long run. I'm not advocating for an emotional agenda at the cost of our financial goals. Instead, I propose we unlock a new market potential through authentic engagement." The sharpness in Roy's gaze faltered slightly, and Jake seized the opportunity to add, "We can redefine our metrics, balance heart with profit. It's a reinvention strategy. We cannot afford to merely chase numbers. We must lead with purpose." Behind the scenes, adrenaline fueled his resolve. Faced with this unexpected debate, Jake realized he wasn't just defending a business strategy. He was advocating for a transformative philosophy that could redefine his entire career. After a few moments that felt like an eternity, the panel remained engrossed in discussion, their heads nodding in a tentative unity of thought. Defiance had opened a door, albeit a small crack. Yet, even amidst this small victory, doubt shrouded Jake's heart. Had he truly swayed them, or was this merely an illusion? Leaving the conference room, he felt a mix of triumph and dislocation. He didn't know if they'd ultimately support his ideas or cast them aside. Now he had to meet Sarah for lunch, and he dreaded the uncertainty of how this day would bedazzle or devastate their plans. Sarah's bright smile was a balm to his nerves as they sat together. "How did it go?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Jake hesitated. "Well, it was a challenge." He recounted the highs and lows of the presentation, filtering through the uncertainties that clouded his vision. He could see Sarah processing his words, wondering how she'd react if he divulged the tension with Roy. "Do you think they'll support your changes?" she asked gently. "I hope so, but I can't shake this feeling of doubt," he admitted. It was both liberating and terrifying to share his vulnerability. "What if I lose my footing in this? What if they don't see my vision?" Sarah reached over, squeezing his hand in reassurance. "You stood up for what you believe in. That's the first step, Jake. You could redefine everything." Her faith imbued Jake with renewed confidence. He thought back to Roy's skeptical gaze. If he could confront that challenge, what else awaited him? Yet, a fresh worry lingered at the edges of his mind. In challenging Roy, had he inadvertently made an enemy, or perhaps something worse, a reinforcer of resistance? If the board's decision hinged on a vote or consensus behind closed doors, could he weather the storm of rejection? The potential fallout lurked like a ghost, threatening both his career's progression and the very connection he cherished with Sarah. Would this divergence create a bridge to new opportunities or fracture his ambitions irrevocably? As the lunch hour drifted on, Jake contemplated the precarious balance of risk and reward he now faced. His story was just beginning to unfold, and every step forward seemed fraught with unknown tension. Would he have the courage to confront the full challenge ahead, or would he falter beneath the weight of tradition and doubt? The real test loomed on the horizon, waiting to solidify his path. Jake spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog, the potential ramifications of his presentation swirling in his mind. His thoughts ricocheted between his vision and the fear of Roy's shadow, which loomed larger than he had anticipated. threatening to eclipse everything he had worked for. In the following days, the atmosphere in the office shifted subtly. Colleagues who previously brushed past him now paused for conversation, reflective of a cautious curiosity about Jake's audacious approach. His department head, Lila, cornered him one morning in the break room with an impressed smile. "I caught the tail end of your presentation. You've got a good point. People do connect better when they feel invested in something personal." Jake felt his confidence swell, but as quickly as it rose, a familiar pang of self-doubt slithered back in. Lila's words were a lifeline, yet they lacked the weight of approval from the board. He had made an impression, undoubtedly, but impressions could be hollow unless they translated into tangible support. Determined not to leave his fate in the hands of ambiguity, Jake devised a plan. Over the weekend, he meticulously prepared a follow-up proposal that included market analyses supporting human-centered initiatives combined with calculated projections on profit margins. If numbers were Roy's language, then Jake would craft his case in those terms. By Monday morning, fueled with a compelling narrative supported by data, Jake found himself pacing outside Roy's office. He'd anticipated the bitter taste of confrontation, but hadn't prepared for the knot of anxiety twisting his gut. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. "Come in," Roy's voice rang out, brusque and authoritative. "Hey, Roy, do you have a moment?" Jake ventured, stepping inside. Roy looked up from his screen, one eyebrow raised, a hint of skepticism apparent in his gaze. "What's this about?" Jake swallowed hard, laying out his proposal. He methodically highlighted the potential impacts of increased consumer trust through authentic engagement, seamlessly integrating numbers into his dialogue. Each point seemed to dance in the air, but he detected Roy's ambivalence as the minutes ticked by, their tension thickening. "I appreciate the effort, Jake, but you're still walking a fine line," Roy replied, his voice carefully neutral. But the undercurrent was unmistakable, a blend of commentary and caution. "You have to remember that the balance sheet is king." "Yes, and I'm not neglecting that," Jake countered, feeling heat rise to his cheeks, a mixture of irritation and desperation. "But what use is a balance sheet if we don't have a thriving community or an engaged workforce behind it? You talk about profits, but getting to them means we're not just numbers on a page. We need to matter to those we serve." Roy adjusted his glasses but seemed taken aback, not by the premise but perhaps by Jake's unwavering demeanor. For a fleeting moment, Jake caught a glimmer of respect flickering in Roy's eyes. "You might be onto something," he conceded slowly. "But leadership requires thick skin. Some might not share your vision, and you'd do well to anticipate that." After their exchange, Jake felt buoyed, yet the weight of reality pressed harder than ever. Every action he took was met with potential backlash. It hit him then. He was not just proving a business concept, he was also forging his path in a world where he had no roadmap. Back at his desk, encouraging murmurs from coworkers still echoed pleasantly, but they soon faded to unease. The board was scheduled to convene again at week's end, and he wondered if he should rally others behind his cause. Would they be allies or detractors? As Friday approached, Jake's apprehension morphed into resolve. He would gather support, galvanize those who shared his vision, and perhaps confront Roy one last time. Deep down, he felt the calling of leadership, not merely a role, but a responsibility to steer the unfamiliar ship of change. He took a deep breath as he typed up an email, outlining a small, informal gathering after work. "Let's get together and discuss ideas for our department and the company as a whole," he wrote, each keystroke a step in the direction of connection. Yet just as he was about to hit send, an unsettling thought crept in. What if gathering like-minded colleagues only turned into an echo chamber, hindering rather than helping his progress? The decision weighed heavily in Jake's mind as the line between boldness and folly became harder to discern. Could he trust his instincts to bridge the divide threatening his budding ambitions? As the final touches of the day melted into a tense twilight, he knew the hour for action was near. Would he take a stand, inviting support or risking alienation? Only the impending meeting would reveal whether his path led to collaboration or isolation. Jake sat at his desk, staring at the blinking cursor on his screen. The decision pulsed in the air like a ticking clock. each second amplifying his anxiety. Should he send the email and risk backlash, or should he retreat into silence, leaving his ideas unseen and unheard? With a deep breath, he pressed send. The act felt monumental, a silent declaration that he was ready to embrace whatever came next. He watched as that small action set off a cascade of emails from those curious about his gathering. "Count me in," wrote Marcus, a fellow engineer known for his analytical mind. "I'm curious to see what you've got cooking," chimed in Sarah, the marketing whiz whose tenacity was legendary among the team.
Jake felt a nerve in him stir, a flicker of hope igniting amidst the chaos of doubt. As the hour of the meeting approached, a swarm of emotions churned inside him. He didn't merely want to present ideas. He yearned to craft a narrative that would resonate with others, a challenge he was slowly realizing might require not just facts, but vulnerability.
When their small group convened after work, something shifted in Jake. The ambiance was filled with excitement and a palpable sense of participation. Even as some faces displayed skepticism, others were curious, leaning forward as he shared his vision. He explained how a focus on authenticity could transform their approach to customers and improve internal morale. Their dialogue was dynamic. Ideas bounced back and forth, nurturing creativity. However, just as Jake began to feel on solid ground, the door swung open to reveal Roy. An unexpected intrusion. Jake's heart raced. Confrontation was inevitable. Did he intend to check on Jake's fledgling influence, or was he there to quash it? Roy's presence commanded attention. He drifted into the room and leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I hope I'm not interrupting some secret meeting," he said, his tone teasing yet sharp. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to Jake, awaiting his response. The air felt thick with tension, and Jake's throat went dry. He wondered if he had overstepped. "Not at all, Roy. We were just discussing some departmental ideas," Jake said, forcing a smile. "Would you like to hear them?" Roy raised an eyebrow, leaning further into the doorway. "Go on then. Impress me." With mounting courage, Jake turned to his colleagues and began again, sharing some insights while subtly inviting their feedback. Roy remained silent, arms crossed, observing intently, and Jake used this scrutiny to push himself further into his narrative. He articulated the value of emotional connections in marketing and the importance of fostering employee engagement, allowing his passion to shine through as he watched his colleagues react positively. The room buzzed with energy, and for a moment, Jake felt like a conductor of an orchestra, each member responding to the rhythm of his words. When he finished, he looked directly at Roy. "I know change isn't easy, but it's about building a foundation for sustainability. We can drive profits by investing in our people first." For a heartbeat, Roy appeared contemplative, a flicker of surprise passing across his features. "Interesting," he replied slowly. "Maybe you're onto something after all, but it'll take more than passion to make this fly." Jake took a leap. "And it'll take more than hesitation to make it fail. Are you willing to support us in this, to let our ideas take root?" Roy's smirk fell momentarily, replaced by a serious expression. "You've put yourself out there, Jake. Just remember, leadership is often about making decisions others are afraid to make. Are you ready for that?" The question hung in the air, layered with implications that weighed heavily on Jake's shoulders. He realized the gravity of this moment, not just for him, but for the entire team that had rallied around the potential for change. As he opened his mouth to respond, an unexpected vibration in his pocket startled him. A phone notification flashed, a message from the board, regarding that week's meeting agenda. In that instant, the weight of his impending future clashed against the promise of their present discussion. Would he step into the void and face whatever consequences loomed ahead, or would he withdraw, faltering in the very moment that could reshape his career? The crossroads lay ahead, and Jake knew the next step would be critical. The position of his ambitions teetered on a knife edge, and the clock was now ticking down to that pivotal moment of truth. As Jake stood in the room, surrounded by his team, he felt the sins of his ambition crash against the potential for change. The stake of their meeting felt monumental. It was more than just the board meeting coming up. It was about their future, all of their futures tethered to a vision that was finally taking shape. Gathering his breath, he gazed at the faces around him. Fellow dreamers eager for revitalization. "Let's harness this energy," he began, his voice steady with newfound confidence. "We have an incredible opportunity to shift how we value success. It's time to redefine not only our metrics, but our humanity within this company. We can be at the forefront of a new revolution in tech, one where innovation meets empathy, driving not just profits, but profound human connections." Encouragement radiated from the group. Eager nods and expressions of understanding mingled with palpable excitement. Jake understood that the coalition he was forging was critical. It wasn't just about rallying support. He needed to cultivate a shared sense of purpose that transcended their individual roles. "Roy makes an excellent point," Jake addressed his colleagues confidently. "We need to craft a roadmap that aligns heart and profitability. Let's compile our ideas and data. I will present them to the board again. We'll emphasize how shifting our focus towards emotional engagement catalyzes real, measurable financial rewards." Jake felt a growing sense of accountability infuse his ambition. As he strategized with his team, ideas flowed, creating an innovative application that not only showcased their tech solutions, but fostered community connections. Each brainstorming session reinforced Jake's resolve. They could create valuable metrics rooted in human experiences. When the night settled and everyone dispersed, Jake returned home, the burden of dread blending with hope in a strange harmony. He knew the persistent fears clinging to him. What if he stumbled in the boardroom? But bolstered by Sarah's belief and the support of his colleagues, he felt essential threads of transformation weaving into the fabric of his identity. At the morning of the board meeting, Jake glanced in the mirror, forcing a confident smile. He was ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Once seated in the boardroom, visible tension crackled in the air. Executives exchanged glances, the weight of expectations hanging heavily. Taking a deep breath, Jake positioned himself before the panel, knowing he needed to communicate not just a vision, but his very essence. "We are on the precipice of a pivotal evolution," he started, projecting warmth and conviction. "Let's not just embrace technology. Let's redefine our legacy in the realms of trust, connection, and sustainability. We can lead our industry, but we must shift our focus from transactions to relationships." As he spoke, Jake felt a wave of conviction wash over him, filling the disenchanted atmosphere with a new energy. He shared the ideas developed with his team, highlighting how their vision would create meaningful consumer engagement while simultaneously driving profits. Data highlighted their projected returns on emotional investments, metrics that would enable the board to quantify success in new, revolutionary ways. He felt the skepticism from some board members dissipate slowly, replaced by faint nods of recognition. But then Roy interjected, his brow furrowed. "And if this doesn't pan out as you hope?" he challenged. "Are you willing to risk our current strategies for this untested philosophy?" In that moment, amidst a swirl of concern and challenge, Jake stood resolute. "I am," he stated simply, and the truth vibrated in the air. Stunned silence enveloped the room. Jake realized he had embraced his own power of conviction. He leaned in, reinforcing, "Let's consider it this way. When we invest in people, when we enhance their experience, we pave the way for loyalty and compassion that drives growth. It's not naivete, rather, it's our way to thrive in a competitive landscape." Skepticism transformed into shared curiosity. They spent the next hour dissecting potential strategies, discussing the viability of Jake's ideas, and slowly peeling back the layers that hinted at a newfound possibility. By the end of the meeting, Jake felt a wave of recognition wash over him. They had formed not just a narrative, but a symbiotic foundation where ambition and empathy could coexist. There were tangible results that could be measured. They were thoroughly revitalizing the potential of their company's legacy. As he exited the boardroom, applause erupted behind him. Colleagues he had gathered rallied around him, enveloping him with encouragement. Jake felt gratitude wash over him, affirming the significance of their collaboration. Soon, Sarah was on the phone relaying her excitement about meeting later that night. Their worlds felt tethered, ambition hand in hand with love. When they finally sat together, Jake knew pride blossomed in him as he shared his triumph. "I found the courage, Sarah. I stepped into the fire and fought for our vision. A vision founded on connection. Her eyes glimmered as she reached out and clasped his hand. I knew you could do it. You've not only started to redefine success, but you've transformed. This is just the beginning. With every step forward, he solidified an understanding of his values. Success would no longer be merely numbers, but would be anchored in deeper connections that would reverberate through their lives at work and home. Jake's journey was one of self-discovery, and in each moment of vulnerability, he had forged not just a professional destiny, but a profound relationship with his own aspirations. He had conquered the internal battle, embraced the dualities within him that merged ambition with affection. The future was no longer a fixed trajectory. Instead, it was a canvas painted with possibilities, each stroke echoing the truth he now lived. And so, Jake Thompson stepped forward, illuminated by his journey of transformation. He had not only achieved his goals, but conquered himself, an architect of legacy redrawn, waiting to craft stories anew. Now is your moment to embrace the journey of transformation. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that shape our lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful narratives reach those who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about how this story resonates with your own journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion about personal growth and redefine their paths. Join us in building a community focused on transformative stories,